This is Alpha Conde Media. Peace and love, wonderful Black Fire family. Welcome to the 54 corresponding show right here on the Black Fire network. I am trusting that your day finds you in good health. Today being on the 20th of October, the year 2020, a day which happens to be a public holiday right here in Kenya, where we celebrate the national heroes. It's actually known as the National Heroes Day or the Mashujaa Day. And this actually commemorates the lives of those people who actually dedicated their lives towards the quest for freedom for the Kenyan people. And there was a very, very big struggle put up against the fight against the colonizers. And people actually did take up their weapons and went into the forest. These people were actually known as the Mau Mau. They took up their weapons, went in the forest, and launched a guerrilla welfare on these British soldiers who had taken over different parts of the country. And what eventually happened is that many people actually did lose their lives, but they had dedicated their lives for that particular quest of actually And we all back. Kindly pardon the interruption. We apologize for the heat right there. But nonetheless, I do trust that everyone is doing fantastic. And of course, I was getting on about the story to do with the Mashujade. Today happens to be a public holiday in Kenya, and every part of Kenya is actually commemorating the national heroes. And in Swahili, we do call heroes Mashujaa, and that is why we do have the Mashujade public holiday. Where people just get to, show their respect and try to commemorate these heroes that did dedicate their lives towards the struggle for independence for the people of Kenya. And I want to share with us some of the previous celebrations of the Mashujade. And this is a bit of what we have right here on the 54 Corresponding Show. Remember, this particular show is all about trying to understand Africa a little bit much better and sharing our perspective on matters to do with the African continent. There is also some, some interaction coming from the outside, but pardon that as well. This is a Black Watfire Network 54 Corresponding Show.
One year after the election, the economy is still on a go-slow as markets wrap themselves around the emerging political constellations. This means that in every electoral cycle of 5 years, 2 years are wasted exclusively attending to electoral matters. Fellow Kenyans, the quest to liberate our land was also fueled by our desire to drive hunger, ignorance, disease, and unemployment from our midst. Unless the economy is sustainably expanding to accommodate the youth graduating every year, then what we are doing by removing 2 years is robbing our children of their future. Therefore, as part of the national question, we are called to create an environment where enterprise can thrive by continuously attracting capital into the country. Endless political contestations creates anxiety, akin to some of the things that we are witnessing in our nation today. Truly, I do not believe that is what our founding fathers and the constitutionalists of independence wanted for us. And if we do not change it now, when we have this constitutional moment, this problem will plague our country for years on end. My invitation to our country, therefore, is for us to have an honest conversation with itself, as William has just said. And we must not shy away from taking bold decisions the way our founding fathers did. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to continue by saying that we cannot talk of our independence heroes
That is
without mentoring the diaspora fraternity
That is a little bit over what is happening right now, and it's taking place in one of the stadiums in Kisii County in Kenya. And like you said earlier, Kenya is commemorating its national heroes that were involved in the struggle for independence. And when I talk about these heroes, we talk about the individuals such as Dedan Kimathi. Dedan Kimathi was part and parcel of the Mau Mau, which was a unit that went into the forest to wage guerrilla welfare against the colonizers and the British Army. And what happened is that there was a lot of people, like I said earlier, that did lose their lives in this particular struggle. And I was saying on later, there was the introduction of a state of an emergency in Kenya. And this was when there was a lot of fighting in the forest that led to the engagement with individuals into these particular guerrilla warfare fighting groups. There was the introduction of a state of emergency in Kenya. And that was in 1958, where people could really not be able to travel and move about. And even before then, people were even brought up into camps. You know, they were put into village camps. Therefore, it would be much easier for these administrators, the colonizers, to to control the people in this regard. But nonetheless, people still left and got recruited into this Mau Mau, which was a freedom fighters movement. And people decided to partake in the best way possible in terms of putting the fight or taking the fight to these British soldiers that had colonized, that were used by the administration, the colonial administration. And what happened is that today we are now actually just getting to commemorate and celebrate. The only problem with these commemorations and celebrations, the only problem you get to realize is that some of these individuals that went into the forest to fight for the independence of Kenya. Some of them, the government has really not recognized them. You know, they are still in abject poverty. Where you do find that the government even did not give some of these particular individuals as pieces of land where they could continue, all the way they could construct and continue with their lives, build up their lives after leaving the fight in the forest, which is what actually did take place. But nonetheless, I do get to agree that much more needs to be done. For example, the government should have put in place programs, and these particular programs would be able perhaps to, enrich, not really the enrich, but even make better the livelihoods of these individuals that were involved in the struggle for independence. Some of them, even their families, their children, are also, not living in the best of conditions. Taking into consideration that the fact that these are individuals who had dedicated their lives, to go and fight for the independence of Kenya. And this is not just in Kenya. I believe even in other different countries, you do find some of the heroes that were instrumental towards, getting the independence for their countries. Some of these heroes have been deserted. Some of these heroes have been forgotten. And the only problem is you find that the other people who have actually honored, the people that are actually honored are the people that were collaborators. The collaborators are the individuals sometimes that are actually honored in place of individuals who actually did partake, did get involved in the fight. And what you get to realize as well is that the government sometimes, African governments, for example, the Commonwealth countries, these are countries that were colonized by the British right here in Africa. You do find also there has been a discussion and a debate about the compensation for these particular individuals and their families that did go out and fighting for or agitating for the independence, whereas most of them did lose their lives. And therefore, most governments have tried to get into a conversation where they can have the compensation over these particular individuals. But all these governments, European governments, the colonizers, for example, the British. I'm using the British because, for example, Kenya is was colonized by the British. And what you get to realize is that they have not even gotten as far as admitting all the wrongdoings with the killings of the people, leave alone getting to admit the need for compensation or the need for reparations, if I would call them so, because these are people whose land was taken. And when their land was taken, they went to agitate for the return of this land and fighting for the return of this land. And most of them were actually murdered in this particular process. Let me show us a real brief one of the videos of the Mau Mau. I want to show us one of the videos of the Mau Mau, so that you can get to have an understanding of what was happening in these colonial times with the African freedom fighters that did go out and try, not really try, but put up the fight against the colonizers and their armies. And eventually, most of these actually did win the fight. This is not just in Kenya, even across the African continent. Freedom fighters have been, they have played their part all across the African continent. But this is a little bit about the Mau Mau, who are the freedom fighters in Kenya.
Flown in to help clear his colony of the Mau Mau menace, which has struck fear into Kenya's very heart.
On October the 20th, 1952, the government of Kenya, supported by 40,000 white settlers and the British Army, declared war on 6 million Africans and on the Kikuyu people in particular. The governor of Kenya announced that due to the widespread activities of the Mau Mau society, he'd been forced to declare a state of emergency.
In Nairobi, capital of Kenya, Europeans and Africans still walk the streets in fear of the dreaded Mau Mau. For it is that band of fanatics whose bloody deeds have cast a dark shadow across the face of Kenya. Some are brought in to face justice, others are shot in fights with police and troops, but thousands more escape to continue their crusade of murder and violence. There is little reliable information about the setup of the terrorist organization, for few members even know from whom they take their orders. They obey blindly, savagely attacking the defenseless, burning, looting, murdering. Kenya is the battlefield of a conflict that cannot end until the Mau Mau is dissolved forever.
The emergency, which was expected to last for a few weeks, went on for 7 years. It took the lives of at least 15,000 Africans, none of whom could possibly have had anything to do with Mau Mau, for Mau Mau never existed. At the end of the Second World War, Kenya's Africans were impatient with colonialism. They had been ruled by Britain for 50 years with little to show for it. In the rural areas, they were confined to overpopulated reserves. In the towns, thousands were homeless. They were not permitted to elect their political representatives. They were forbidden to grow valuable cash crops. They were neither men nor women. They were natives. And in everything they did, they faced a color war. In an effort to change things, they now threw their support behind a mass nationalist movement, the Kenya African Union.
The political activity were terrific. We have aroused the political enthusiasm of the people throughout the country in order that they should fight for their rights.
But Kenya's white settlers were also impatient after the war. They were less than 1% of the colony's population, but for half a century, they had dominated its political and economic life. They had no intention of letting their mother country, Britain, sacrifice their interests to the cause of African self-determination.
Their objectives was to hold on to Guinea, which had the largest European population amongst the 3 East African states, and to make this a white man's country. That was their objective. It was the objective of the settlers, and they were supported by the British government.
When you consider that the people here in Kenya, the masses of the Africans here in Kenya, are probably roughly about the same stage Great Britain was 500 years ago, we do not think that normal forms of democracy are suitable.
In the face of the intransigence of the settlers and the indecisiveness of the British government, the moderate policies of the KAU, or KAU as the Kenya African Union was known, seemed to be making little headway.
Cow didn't want to provoke the situation at all. We thought by the normal democratic methods we would get our way. In other words, what we were asking for in this was just really human justice. We asked for more representation in Parliament. We asked for more money on education, agriculture, and so on. So for some time, there was a feeling in Cow to continue that sort of struggle. And the others have said, no, this is not going to work, let's fight it out.
One of those who was prepared to fight, if necessary, was Solomon Memia. He had been in politics since the mid-1930s as a leader of the Kikuyu Central Association. When this party was banned in 1940, Memia took it underground and helped carry it through into the post-war period. We organized a secret political movement when we realized that things were moving too slowly with the Kenya African Union. Our movement was based on an oath, which was intended to give our people courage to fight for our land and for our freedom.
That is a little bit of the background of this particular party. Of this particular movement. That were involved with the fighting for the independence of the people of Kenya. And like you said, today is a public holiday where people do commemorate the national heroes, and we do actually call it the Mashujaa Day in Kenya. Every 20th of October every year, people do get together and just get to commemorate the heroes of the people who actually fought for the independence of our beautiful country of Kenya. Only the problem is that the people who actually fought for independence, most of them do not have a thing to show for it, because some of them, they're still living in abject poverty. The situations in which perhaps you would expect them to be living, these are very, very totally different. The government has sort of deserted them, and I believe I was saying earlier, there should be a program to make sure that these particular people are actually looked after, and perhaps their interests are being addressed. Because how do you go and fight for independence or fight for freedom and eventually get to end up living without even land yourself? Yeah, you went to fight for the independence for the people to regain their land, whereas you yourself, you're actually living in abject poverty. You do not have a land to show for it. You do not have anything to show for it, whereas you are involved with that particular kind of a struggle. Nonetheless, Bombi Danfa, thank you so much for joining us. You're saying greetings, Pikes. Greetings to you too. I see Mr. Pirate Brain. You're saying peace, Pikes. Peace to you too. I trust that you are doing well this particular morning, being on the 20th of October, the year 2020. The year is moving pretty fast. And of course, what has been happening is that we have been highlighting briefly about some of the freedom fighters. Like you said, there was a movement known as the Mau Mau, and the Mau Mau was instrumental towards fighting for the independence of the people of Kenya and the world's guerrilla warfare. They went into the forest, and that is where they were making their plans and organizing the fight against the colonizers. And like you said, there was the introduction of a state of an emergency in the early 1950s. And these went all the way for 7 years. And over this particular period, there was a lot of oppression and the abuse of human rights. People are actually put up in reserves. And in these particular reserves, they were actually overpopulated. Even in the cities such as Nairobi, you find that there was a lot of a restriction of the movement of people. And that is why the movement, the freedom fighting movements, went out, and they were fighting for the regaining of their land from the colonizers. And like you said, the war took many years. It wasn't won in one particular year. And like I always say that many people did lose their lives. And from what you heard from that particular documentary, you realize that even people who are taking orders, some of them did not really even get to understand the structure or the organization of the Mau Mau, of the freedom fighting movement. Some of them did even take orders blindly. Let me share briefly a little bit more about this particular video, and then we shall move on from that and go into politics of the day. We do have a story coming all the way from the Guinea, and the Guinea happens to be in West Africa, where they are expecting the results of they are expecting the results of their elections, and therefore we shall also be getting to address that.
Because of the way they butchered their victims.
You could hear them shouting it as they went in, cut, cut, cut. And they would just slash, so that they would slash anybody.
No,
though many Africans would die at the hands of Mau Mau, it was the murder of whites that horrified the outside world. To the British, the uprising was such an outrageous attack on colonialism that it justified any response. And that response, when it came, would be brutal and shocking. In the early 1950s, Kenya shone out as one of the last jewels in Britain's colonial crown. The European settlers farmed Kenya's richest soil in an area that had become known as the White Highlands. Over 2 generations, they had built themselves a life of luxury. It seemed as if the good life would go on forever.
The white settlers lived the English-style life. They had their farms. They had lots of servants serving at table. It all appeared to be terribly rich, terribly posh, and absolutely remote from the life of the ordinary African.
The ordinary settler really enjoyed being in Kenya. It was a good life. I mean, let's face it, be rather blunt, you would get servants, and booze was cheap. The Europeans took the view that they were doing the Africans a great favor by being in Kenya. We're jolly good chaps, you know, and you're very lucky to have us here. They were 3rd or 5th class citizens compared to the Europeans. It wasn't racist. It was just, a fact of life.
These are the plantations.
Britain has brought much good to Kenya. Her standards of living are growing still higher as more of her people learn the lessons that the white man has to teach.
But the high life of the Europeans was built on African land and African labor. Poorly paid, unable to vote, and restricted even in the crops they could grow. Africans were beginning to resent white man's rule.
When Kuburunga Burwani Mudungushi, Nonga Muringa, we shall carry on Muringa, Kuringate, no Aringa Puan.
And this is one of the Mau Mau fighters.
No walk when there. No Kuringa Puana. Natikura and Avare Siaka Kanamura, Romuanake, Lunikona Mundo on the Mutunio Gaukra, no Keroga Miawega, no Nubuana. Na Lidia Mundo Mudua Vora Nangira Teo. Ria kulingwa ni kuinite ite agwaka gandio bwana na ni kuburu arabu ndoko na iyo ya itai kuniko osio nubuto na osio no kombo tare mwega.
In the post-war world, the facts of colonial life were changing fast. One by one, African countries were demanding self-rule. Africans who had risked their lives fighting for the British during the war were not prepared to return to the old ways.
1942, that what I did again, 1939. No, the Longo baby, I'm married with the kid of that way. They will know all world to get you carry to so called for you. Now, they know the whole world who take you out at the go to go out to the road to kill you again. They get a man have a
Yes, this is what he says that even after they came from fighting for the British in the World War, people did not get any benefit from fighting or siding with the British or working, fighting for the British in the World War. And therefore, they decided they'll actually now wage the war against this same British army to get self-rule.
Tension between black and white was rising, but white settlers felt themselves immune to changing times.
I remember a settler saying to me, "You young district officers know nothing. We've been here for years. We know our boys," as they used to call them. "We know the boys. We know all about them. You don't know anything." And it was the difference between knowing. The settler did know a lot. He did know a lot about Africans, how to handle African labor, how to use African labor. But he could not see what the new...
This is really not using the African labor, it's really colonizing the people, of course, using their free labor just for nothing, just to benefit themselves and continue taking the resources from the African continent, either by means of, getting people to work on these particular plantations and determining which particular crops they wanted planted and how the harvest, the production of the harvest is going to be utilized. For most of them, they did send it back to Britain, where it would actually benefit them and their families, not giving any benefit to the people of Africa. That is why, like you said, the Mau Mau movement, among other different freedom fighting movements, decided to wage the war against these colonizers for self-rule, as well as also to get to be able to regain their land back. Nonetheless, this is a 54 corresponding show, and I'm delighted that you are with us on this particular broadcast. We never take your company for granted. Remember, I would just like you to head over to the network website. It's www.blackhotfirenetwork.com, and you can be able to create your own profile right there. You can also head over to our Google Play Store and download the Black Hot Fire Network radio app. You will find it there. It's available. Just search for Black Hot Fire Network and you'll be able to find it and enjoy music on the go as you go about your business, or as you go about your errands, or whatever that you are about this particular day. Nonetheless, going back into the topic of the day, I just wanted to highlight about what is happening in Guinea. Guinea is a West African country. It's actually a tiny West African country, but nonetheless, this particular country has been led by the one Alpha Conde for a long time. And what has been happening right now is that Alpha Conde decided to change and twist the law into his own favor to allow him to go and vie for another term, which is another term for 6 years. This is an 82-year-old leader, and I do not see why he did not, he could not step aside and just have perhaps another younger candidate come in place and take over the leadership of this particular country, or allow the people to exercise their freedom, their freedom to vote and just determine their own leaders. So what has been happening in this particular country is that the election did take place over the weekend, and as we're speaking, there is a counting of the votes. But there has been one of the opposition leaders who decided to come out and claim victory. He goes by the name Diablo, and Diablo actually came out and claimed that Diallo. He actually came out and said that he had won. The provisional results actually show that he has won, and this is what went down.
Mounting political tensions in Guinea. Opposition leader Celo Dalen Diallo claimed victory in the first round of the presidential election. But the country's electoral body hasn't even published the results of the high-stakes vote and says his claim is void. He says he'd like to reassure the people of Guinea who voted in peace without violence that no provisional results have been proclaimed for the time being. That the Independent National Electoral Commission is the only institution empowered to proclaim provisional results. The opposition leader is running against the incumbent Alpha Conde, who's seeking a controversial third term. His supporters welcomed his claim. He told them, in spite of the anomalies that mars the ballot and in view of the results coming out, I'm the victor in this election already in the first round. On the day of the vote was mostly calm. It followed months of protests against Conde after he pushed through measures to change the constitution so he could run for a third term. The rallies were met with deadly crackdowns, and it's now feared fresh violence could erupt.
This is a country where we're finding, there's a blink of on the blink of chaos because, like you heard there, the president, sorry, one of the opposition leaders came out and said that he had won in the first round of, in the first round of the votes, and his supporters actually came out into the streets to celebrate. Whereas this information had not been given by the Electoral Commission, and therefore this has now been claimed as null and void. You cannot just go out there and determine that you are the player and you also the referee. That there cannot really happen. But nonetheless, there is a worry. For me, I think Alpha Conde might still press on and, turn everything to his favor, because already he knows how the electoral system runs. And of course, this system is run by people. And these are people that could actually be compromised by this leader, Alpha Conde. Like I said, he's an 82-year-old that has run the country and is seeking, he also did run for this particular term. He wants to extend his role with another 6 years. And I believe by the time he's getting out of power, that he might be about 88, which is crazy because that's almost towards 90. And I think these particular West African countries also need fresh kinds of ideas, fresh kinds of energy coming up all the way from younger leaders. If you ask me, I think younger leaders would actually be the way to go instead of having people who are 89, 89 and 90 running the country, whereas we do have young, energetic leaders who might perhaps be able to steer the country towards progress, economic progress, as well as other different, facets of progress in the lives of the West African people. But I do believe this is also a French puppet, if you ask me, because even with this particular kind of a situation, we still might not hear, any word from, the people, the observers from the outside. We might not hear any word, coming about on their opinion, At times when you do have the elections, some regional bodies and international bodies, for example, the ECOWAS, would have perhaps played an observation role in terms of getting to determine, is this particular election free and fair, or is there the probability that that these might not be possible. These might not be free and fair. But nonetheless, there is also something else happening, and this is in Tanzania and Ghana. Tanzania and Ghana are also expected to go to the polls, and Tanzania will come first in October, whereas Ghana will come second in terms of voting in December. But as you speak, in Tanzania is now to allow voting using the driver's license. Tanzania's Electoral Commission had said that the voters with missing identity cards will be allowed to use driving licenses and passports to vote in the next week's general election. And therefore, from next week, we shall also be getting to update you on what is happening in Tanzania. Like I said, Tanzania is also a country where there is a big support for the leading party, which is known as Chama Pinduzi, or the CCM. And this particular CCM party has seen a lot of support, and is a party of the incumbent president. This particular incumbent is known as John Kapombe Magufuli. And there is a high likelihood that perhaps he might continue to run the country for another extra term of 5 years, according to the polls. Not really the polls, but even the popularity of this particular party, it might be very difficult. Sometimes we talk about democracy, but then again, when you think about democracy, it's really an ideal. It's an ideal. Sometimes, especially on the continent of Africa, and even globally, not just on the continent of Africa. Even globally, you go and look at the issue of democracy. People might really just talk about democracy, whereas in reality, that might not be the case. But nonetheless, I won't share with us another different story coming from West Africa. And we do have the one and only Teodoro Guema. I believe if you have been following the 54 Corresponding Show, you do know by now, the son of the Equatorial Guinea president, who is known as Teodoro Guema Jr. And this particular Teodoro Guema Jr. Has decided to go out on on his social media, on his Instagram, and flaunt the kind of a life that he's living, and also flaunt his holiday. Let me just take you straight to his Instagram. He's known as Teddy, or Teodoro, but he also goes with the name Teddy. I'm talking about Guinea. I'm talking about Guinea. You know, there are 3 Guineas in West Africa. There is Guinea-Bissau, there is Guinea, and there is New Guinea. There are 3 countries. You know, there is Guinea-Bissau, there is Guinea, and there is New Guinea. I'm talking about Guinea. Yes, Guinea-Conakry. That is the one I'm talking about, where they have had the elections, and now they are waiting for their the elections to be announced. Now I have moved away from Guinea. Now I have gone to the neighboring country, which is New Guinea. I'm talking about New Guinea right now. And the president of New Guinea is known as Teodoro Guema, and his son is known as Teodoro Guema. Sorry, I'm talking about Equatorial Guinea right now. Sorry, Equatorial Guinea, not New Guinea. It's Equatorial Guinea. And Equatorial Guinea, the president is known as Teodoro Guema, and the son is actually known as Teodoro Guema Jr. I think in Africa, when you look at the system in Africa, Equatorial Guinea has the longest serving president in Africa, and not really the longest serving because he has not been serving anyone. He has just been serving himself. But he has actually run the country for 4 decades, which is 40 years in power in Equatorial Guinea, the country that is endowed with natural resources such as oil. But you find that the political elites are really living very, very well, whereas, you know, the bigger percentage of the population is living in abject poverty. But nonetheless, I want to address what has been happening with the son of the president of Equatorial Guinea. And he has his Instagram page where it's Teddy Nguema. You know, that is his Instagram page, Teddy Nguema. And all the resources from the oil, you can see how that, you know, the resources or the revenues from the oil are actually used. Just when you get to check out his Instagram page. This is the son of the president of Equatorial Guinea. He goes with the name Teddy Nguema. It was about 100K followers, and yesterday or the day before, really, he went on his Instagram to show how he is enjoying his holiday. And these are some of the videos. These are some of the videos of you know, him enjoying life while the people of Equatorial Guinea continue to suffer in abject poverty. And you know, him is living the life. He could care less whether the people of Equatorial Guinea really, you know, are living in poverty. You can see him with his speedboat. And this is the same guy who actually bought the gloves of Michael Jackson. And I also went to buy a fleet of Lamborghinis and Ferraris. And you can see him here with, I believe, one of his girls. He was the same also individual who also went out and he was trying to, you know, marry one of the reality TV show stars from the Real Housewives. I believe the Real Housewives of Atlanta. And the money of the people of Equatorial Guinea, I do believe the people of Equatorial Guinea should actually hold these leaders accountable. But what has been happening is that there has been oppression of the people, and people are really not happy with this particular kind of a flaunting of, you know, the kind of government that, you know, that this particular guy represents. And you can see him on holiday. He could care less about what is happening, and he's actually living the life. And he has been appointed. At some point, he has served as a minister in this particular country, where his father is a president and then the son is a minister. And I believe he has booked, you know, these houses to himself. You know, he just goes on, and it's crazy. Nonetheless, someone is asking, fucking all sleek, tell me how much your government salary is per month. That is Simeonos, who is actually asking this. And this is a kind of a lifestyle you find with, you know, the individuals who have actually taken the money, from the public coffers. And at some point, people of West Africa, Equatorial Guinea, I believe, should actually hold these leaders accountable and also emancipate themselves from these kinds of leaders. And nonetheless, Alpha Conde donated millions to France to rebuild the church. Yes. And they should have a confederation in West Africa. They do have the ECOWAS in West Africa. But nothing much is really happening when it comes to that particular front, because when you do have the fighting in Mali, you know, the what do you call it, the coup in Mali, there wasn't any kind of strong intervention by the ECOWAS, and therefore, even if they were to have a confederation in West Africa, having their own currency and everything else, I believe some of these leaders in West Africa will not decide to join this confederation because they want to continue running their own countries as puppets of the French, because they do have, these are just gatekeepers or doorkeepers of the French, and they have continued to oppress their own people even after the French left. because they want to do it on behalf of other friends. And like I do believe that only the people can actually wake up and realize what is happening and emancipate themselves from these kinds of leaders through revolution. And for example, we did have the Arab Spring and other different revolutions, and even the revolution in Sudan. But nonetheless, that's a whole different set of a story that we shall be focusing on some other different day. But for now, we shall be keeping eyes on the situation with the politics of Ghana, as well as the politics of Guinea, as well as also the politics of Tanzania, as we hope to see if there will be any change in power in these particular countries. Nonetheless, I just also want to give us some updates before we wind up. I want to give us some updates from Botswana. There has been the completion of a bridge that is connecting Zambia and Botswana, and this goes across the Zambezi River and has been completed as in ready, and it is ready for use. And it was constructed using 259 million US dollars. And it was constructed jointly by these two countries, and it was actually started in 2014. So I believe it has taken so long. But this is the kind of a project that we need to see, projects that unite the people, so that we can be able to travel maybe from Zambia to go into Malawi. From Malawi to Zambia, and from Zambia to Botswana. I almost got the facts wrong. From Zambia to Botswana. And I do believe that now this makes the trade among these particular countries even stronger, because we need bridges that will connect the African people to be able to do trade among themselves. This is from the official page of Botswana. This is a page that promotes Botswana as a page that promotes Botswana as a tourist destination. But let me share these really quick so that you can get to see what is happening with new construction of the bridge connecting these two wonderful places, Botswana and Zambia, right here. Yes, this is a bridge. From what you can see, it goes across the Zambezi River. And I believe this makes it easy for people now to be able to transport their goods, and even to be able to travel from Zambia getting into Botswana. Because this perhaps will also increase the trade, in the SADC region, which is the Southern African Development Corporation, because this now, enables faster and easier movement of goods. Instead of using a longer way, they can actually just use this particular bridge and get from Zambia to Botswana. I think I would love to use this particular bridge. It looks so big, but I would love to see these bridges for myself, as well other different spectacles in Zambia and Zimbabwe. We have talked about the Zambezi River. We have talked about the falls, the Zambezi Falls, among other different spectacles to see in Zambia and Zimbabwe. But nonetheless, I believe this is a good way. This is one of the good ways to connect our people and bring unity, and of course enable people to trade much more from these two countries, because I believe this bridge will not just be used by the people of Zambia. It might even be used by the people of other different nations from the Southern African region, which is a good thing. Bombi Dampa, you saying he bought the Michael Jackson glove and jacket. Yes, with the same money, and then went to Switzerland carrying a bag of money, and the money was actually confiscated. And even some of these Ferraris, they have actually been confiscated, and therefore they have been put up for auction. But now the problem is, even if they are put up for auction, the money does not really go back to the people. The problem is that there is also corruption, where this particular money still put in the hands of a few other different individuals, where they do not benefit anyone. Even if the money is, even if the property is taken and auctioned, and the money is put in different accounts, eventually this particular money does not really benefit the people of Equatorial Guinea. I would like to share with us real quick the life in Equatorial Guinea and the disequality or the inequality. And this is Equatorial Guinea right here on the 54 correspondence. This is it. He actually didn't learn how to moonwalk. He just bought this particular property to enjoy himself with.
Equatorial Guinea. Arriving in Equatorial Guinea on my first time, I met with a local friend who took me on a beautiful highway. But something was a little odd. There were no cars. There were beautiful buildings, hotels, and even a golf course, but nobody was around. Then I went to the downtown, where the roads were so muddy and destroyed that you couldn't even walk on them with normal shoes. I soon realized that there were two parts of Equatorial Guinea: the extremely rich leaders and everybody else. Equatorial Guinea has a lot of oil, and it also has a small population. So the average citizen could be really rich. To put this into perspective, the average GDP per person is comparable to most Western countries, except in Equatorial Guinea, 2/3 of the population live on less than a few dollars a day. This is what Equatorial Guinea typical home looks like. You can see behind me, we have a little storage area down here. Living room here. Bedrooms. Notice they use curtains as doors. This is where I slept. And this is the bathroom. And when you take a shower, you need to use buckets. The actual shower doesn't work. It's you throw buckets of water on you. How is a country supposed to be successful when the president spends more on a luxury yacht than he does on the country's entire educational budget? So why hasn't anything been done? Why have Western countries ignored what is going on in Equatorial Guinea? Well, to quote a local, foreigners are more interested in oil than human rights.
And that is exactly, just to put it in a nutshell, what is happening in Equatorial Guinea. And anyone else could be concerned about the oil and not the people on the ground themselves, which is actually crazy. Robert Williams, thank you so much for joining us. The president right there has been quoted using, millions and millions of money on buying a personal yacht. And using less money in terms of in the education. The money that he has put in education is relatively lesser than the money that he has put up in the education sector. And earlier on, I shared with you the son of the president. The son of the president has also been involved in buying, Lamborghinis, Ferraris, and all these different kinds of things. And this is him right here. This is the son of the president in Equatorial Guinea. And this is his video on Instagram. That right there is the kind of an irony. You find that these are countries with small population, and these particular people will be living really, really good because they have a small population and they are making lots of money from oil. But this particular money from oil is going only to a few individuals, and the rest of the population is left in abject poverty. Nonetheless, Hussein his uncle was the past president of Equatorial Guinea. Yes, but I believe they overthrew him. The president, the incumbent, actually overthrew him. And of course, that is how he has managed to stay in power for 40 years. But I believe much more needs to be done. The revolution has to come from the people. But nonetheless, we shall be talking about that and much more matters. He's so rich, he's lonesome. I think he is. But no, he was trying to get some of the females, some of the ladies, really, from the Real Housewives of Atlanta. He was actually dating one of them. And, he's out there on social media showing his life, the lavish life. He probably could be rich, but still lonesome. But I know money can afford you stuff. But anyway, we are winding up at this particular broadcast of the 54 Correspondent Show. I trust that you are doing fantastic, and I want to wish you a happy and productive day ahead. Remember to check out the website www.blackhotfirenetwork.com, and of course, if you would like to support the network, simply feel free to do so by clicking on the donations tab right there. Much peace and love. Till next time, I want to wish you a happy and productive day. Thank you so much, Mr. Pirate Brain. Thank you so much, Robert Williams. Thank you so much, Bombi Danfa, and everyone else that was with us on this particular broadcast. I love and appreciate every one of you. Thank you for taking the time to join us. And until next time, much peace and love. I want to say kwaheri.